This is Chris,
This is Nick.
and you're listening to the Midnight Tapes. Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of the Midnight Tapes. And for today's episode, it's going to be a little different. We're going to start off with a story of someone who experienced today's topic, which is...
The Whistler.
So let me go ahead and read the story for you guys. When I was about 8 years old, I was taking my dog for a walk through the neighborhood with my mom. It was maybe 11 p.m. We lived next to a swamp/woods area on the edge of our neighborhood in Lansing, Michigan. I remember it being very silent and slightly windy. From down in the swamp, we heard somebody whistling at us. It sounded sort of like a bird, but each whistle was different enough to where the lack of consistency made it human-like. The whistle sounded higher, then lower. I can't really describe it. My mom had a concerned, slightly terrified look on her face and grabbed my hand and said that we should go inside quickly. I didn't understand because I was too young, but seeing my mom freak out made me freak out too. After a while, though, I kind of forgot about it. 2 years later, I was taking my dog out again late at night. There was a large bush that could easily obscure a person behind it, just next to the front door. As I was finishing the walk, the whistling noise started again. The same pitches, same inconsistent human-like tones. As soon as I heard it, a chill went down my spine as I remembered exactly the feeling of seeing my mom terrified, looking down into the swamp at something I couldn't see. Maybe she couldn't either. I ran inside as fast as possible. Years went by and I thought less and less about it. I told only a handful of people, and eventually it slipped from my mind. Fast forward to last summer. I'm 24, started dating my girl Sarah. We moved out to South Dakota for work. For Independence Day, we decided to go to Pierre, South Dakota, and watch the fireworks along the bank of the Missouri River. There was a free camping spot behind the hospital where you could pitch your tent, hang out, and see the fireworks up the river. We were near the end of the campground, and there were a few people around us. As it was getting dark, the fireworks began. They were pretty far away, so the illumination they brought was very little. Thus, we had to sit right at the edge of the river to be able to see them. A huge thunderhead was moving in, and the storm was imminent. So the air seemed electric, and the wind was picking up. The atmosphere was eerie, to say the least. The police boats herded all the other boats off the river and had left our area to do that elsewhere. Most of the other campers walked up the river to have a better view of the fireworks, but Sarah and I stayed back. We were drinking PBR tall boys and kicking it. Suddenly, we heard a sound of a paddle, methodically dipping into the water. We saw a figure steering a canoe about 20 meters offshore. Sarah decided to get more beers from the car, leaving me alone to stare at this mystery person, and then, of course, they whistled at me. My entire body was frozen and covered in goosebumps. It was the same exact whistler from my childhood, more than a decade earlier. I looked at the figure, but it was too dark to discern who it could be. They were wearing a hat. When they were perpendicular to the shore from me, they stopped paddling, turned the canoe to face directly at me, and whistled right at me. I was so frightened I stood up and shouted at them, "Who are you?" They didn't say anything, just whistled a couple of times, turned the canoe 180 degrees, and paddled out of sight. I'm a videographer, so I already had my camera by my side and I was taking video of the fireworks. As the canoe was almost out of sight, I grabbed my camera and got a shot of them whistling as they went away. When Sarah came back from getting the beer, she was very confused as to why I was so freaked out. When I explained, she was freaked out a bit too. I was convinced we would both be murdered that night. How did this whistling person follow me after 14 years all the way to South Dakota? Was it a coincidence? Why was it the same whistling noise? Who was that person and where did they go? So many questions still unanswered. To this day, I'm more afraid of being outside in the dark where I might hear the whistling again. I'm open to any explanations. Alright, so pretty much what the person experienced, he said he went on a trip with his girlfriend. They went to go see the fireworks, and he's heard the same whistle without a body, pretty much, just since he was a child. Then it happened a few years later, and it still follows him today. So is there anything you'd like to add before we start the discussion?
Yeah, actually, I think it's interesting how he had heard that whistle, since his childhood, right?
Yeah.
But he had never seen a body along with it.
Yeah.
And at this age, he was able to see.
Yeah, he was able to see finally. I'm wondering if this sort of entity is something that only presents itself to you when you're older, because you notice how his mom was looking at something in the water that he thought she could see, but he couldn't because he was younger. And now that he's older, maybe now he can actually visualize, or it allows you to see it. I definitely think it's a really frightening story, not only because of what we read, but there's also a video attached to it.
Sure, yeah. There's a video that he caught with it, actually. He posted about it and everything, and, you can hear it. The whistling actually pretty clear.
Yeah, and we actually have the video for you guys, so we'll play that right now.
You whistling? Is it you? Stop it.
Okay, so obviously you guys saw the video, and he was hearing the whistling. If you have headphones, you might have heard it better. But he's telling his wife, like, he thinks she's playing a prank on him.
Yeah.
Because he's really traumatized from this since he was little. So he's like, stop it. Like, is that you whistling? Like, stop whistling. And then we hear the fireworks and everything's going on. And you hear a low humming in the background. I'm sure that was maybe like another boat nearby. But you definitely hear like the whistle,
Yeah, exactly.
And what I noticed is, like, near the end of the video, it cuts to a different scene that he like recorded. And in the distance, you see like a boat or something with somebody like wearing something red on top.
Yeah.
It was extremely blurry though, so like obviously we couldn't see what exactly it was. But yeah, this whole video seems like legit. It doesn't seem like anything was like anybody was trying to fabricate anything. There's a whole story with this. What do you think about the video? Like, did it scare you, or is this something like, have you experienced anything like this?
Never really like that, but I think the video seems pretty authentic, to be honest. It seemed I don't know how to explain it. Like, I feel like when you're trying to fabricate something, you have some sort of tone in your voice. He didn't really have that tone. To me, he seemed very authentic about what he was saying, and he seemed like like he was genuinely kind of afraid and shocked. I think that it's good, especially when you're telling a story that's kind of so detailed like this, to have that video evidence. And I mean, we even have more details on the Whistler.
Yeah, actually, when we were going down this like rabbit hole of the Whistler, we were like researching the topic for our podcast. Obviously, we actually found that some people said it was kind of similar. It had the same characteristics as an urban legend.
Mm-hmm.
That it goes by the same name, like the Whistler, but it's actually coming from Venezuela and Colombia, and over there it's called something else. It's called El Silbón. So this legend came about like around the 19th century. They said that people would hear like a pretty much like a whistle without like anybody there.
Sure, but it's like a musical whistle.
Yeah, it's very musical. And like the thing is, like, if you hear the whistle close, that means he's actually far away,
mm-hmm.
and you're not in danger. But when you hear the whistle really far away and like you can barely hear it, that's when he's the closest.
In which, in my opinion, is kind of more ominous, right? Because it's
yes, exactly.
It's kind of, it's where you let your guard down. If you hear it, like, for people that don't know about this, say that happens to you, right? You hear the whistling. If you hear it close, you think that he's gonna get you.
Mm-hmm.
But when you hear far away, you kind of let your guard down. You feel you can breathe, and that's when he's at his most dangerous, because that's when he's closest, which I think is what makes it all more scary.
Yeah, and people said like, okay, like obviously there's a whistle that you hear, but what does it mean? Some people said that it may be foreshadowing your death or the death of a loved one. Some people have claimed to actually see the person who's whistling. They said like it's like a very tall creature and it moves quickly throughout the treetops. And they said that you can hear this anywhere at any time. It doesn't matter. Like this isn't something that where you go to a location and you might hear it.
Like you don't like, for instance, like you wouldn't have to go to the woods.
Yeah, yeah, you wouldn't have to go to the woods or some broken down house. This can happen anywhere, and like in some stories, it says that he even just goes house to house, like, and he whistles and sees who he can scare, pretty much, and as we've seen, like the stories that people talk about, like it follows them, wherever they are, how old they are, like it has a hold on them, and we even have another story that I'm gonna read. This was posted 2 days ago, actually, on the thread where we found the original story for the Whistler that we read at the beginning. It's not too long, so I'm just gonna read it right now. It was the beginning of December of this past year. I was home alone with my fiance, and we were up late studying and doing homework, which was around 11 p.m. His family lives with us for the time being, but we're not always sure of when they're in the house or not. We can usually tell when they're in the house if we hear a TV on or someone walking around. We were studying with the door open and the rest of the house was dark with the hallway dimly lit by a light in our room. The whole house was quiet during the hours we were studying. Then what seemed out of nowhere, we both heard a very strong and perfectly pitched whistle of Santa Claus is coming to town. We didn't immediately register what we had heard. However, after a minute or two, we both looked at each other and asked if we heard that. In a skeptical agreement, we brushed it off as his mom in the house whistling, since she normally whistles when she walks around the house. We even tried assuming it's just a TV that was left on or one of those louder commercials that played. Our curiosity got the best of us and we decided to investigate by looking around the house. We quickly realized that we had been home alone. We then checked one of the bedrooms and the TV was on. However, the volume was on its lowest setting and it could not have produced the whistle we heard. We were more than creeped out by what we heard as we tried talking through what had happened. It was the most perfectly pitched whistle that very few people could reproduce on the first try. It was even more off-putting because it sounded as if someone was walking toward, then just stopped to whistle at the door opening of our room. When my fiance's family came home, probably within half an hour of the ordeal, we told them what happened and they were weirded out as well. A few weeks had passed and it was finally Christmas. We didn't hear any other whistling since that night, so we just assumed that was the end of it. While we were opening gifts, we put some Christmas music on and TV on a low setting so we could still hear each other. My sister, who was visiting for Christmas, then recorded a short video of some people exchanging gifts. At the end of the gift exchange, I wanted to watch the video she took. Right at the beginning of the video, all you could hear was a very pronounced whistling, with very faint Christmas music playing in the background. Although the whistling was only for a few seconds, it was strong enough to overpower the amount of people talking in the background. Needless to say, we were all a little creeped out since no one was whistling, nor was the Christmas music playing anything remotely close to a high note or whistle. We haven't heard anything since Christmas, other than my fiance's mom's occasional yet distinct whistling throughout the house, and I hope that was the end of it. Has anyone else ever experienced a weird, creepy, perfectly pitched whistle on multiple occasions? Should we be concerned?
You see, now, the thing that gets me about this story is especially how, they're just, in their room and they kind of, they make it, seem, or the way they illustrate it is by saying it's kind of seemed like as if someone had whistled and came to the door opening just to whistle, which is kind of freaky with it.
Yeah, that's freaky. Yeah, like someone's lurking around your house, just trying to like mess with you, kind of.
Yeah.
Making a noise here, just so you get kind of like freaked out.
This isn't anything that I've read on any facts or anything, but what I think is I feel like if you draw attention to it, that's when it kind of grabs you, right? Like, I'm sure we've probably all experienced something like this, but we've just kind of brushed it off. We never really thought about it, especially because we live, in places where there's other people.
Yeah.
So we kind of assume, all this.
We kind of assume
else.
Everything has an explanation.
Exactly. So we, just like if we try to think back about it, we probably don't have a story about it because our mind is just forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably for the best because we don't want to draw attention to that because I don't want to know what happens if he does get you, which...
Yeah, and honestly, like, out of all the topics we've covered, I don't know about you, but since we started covering this topic and researching it, I think, since last week, this thing has been freaking me out every day.
It has, honestly.
It has been freaking me out every day.
I'll be, up at night, and randomly it'll pop into my head, and I don't
want to hear.
I don't
Yeah,
want to.
exactly.
Yeah, I don't want to think about
and
it.
this is just a coincidence, I'm sure. I was at work 2 days ago, and we obviously close at a certain time, but the outside lobby stays open. People can still pass by, so our windows were closed, and you can't see through those windows because they're like opaque. So as I'm like sitting there just working, like it's only me and my other coworker, and then the rest of the staff is like kind of towards the back. I heard a whistle. Like someone came in. Obviously, it was somebody. Somebody came in whistling. But I can't tell you how freaked out I was, just because someone was whistling so loud. I was like, "What's the coincidence?" Obviously, I didn't see who it was. I didn't want to go outside because it's like whatever. Like it's just a whistle. But this has really been something that like we've covered shadow people, and even that in alone, like that's the thing to be scared of because that's like figures. But this is like a disembodied whistle that tells like of your death. Like this is, for me personally, I've never heard of anything like this. And when we found it, immediately it captured my attention because it's so simple. Like you could be anywhere, and if you hear this whistle, it's a bad sign.
Exactly, and the thing that freaks me out the most about it is the fact that it's disembodied. The fact that you don't know where it's coming from. It could be coming from at any angle, and you know what I'm saying. Like I'll be like, especially up at night, and I think about it, and it comes across my mind, and like it's like I hope to God I don't hear a whistle right now.
Yeah,
because if I do,
I
don't know.
And it's kind of like a thing where like almost like I don't know if this is a sort of entity that comes to you when you think about it.
See, exactly.
So that's why like I don't even want to spend a second thought on this because it's like I know when you think about things you're putting an energy into it, and that energy is like if you're calling a cab, you're putting your hand up. I need something. So I feel like a lot of times like a lot of ghosts and entities like they feed off that, which is fear.
Yeah.
It projects out of us. It's like a worldwide like signal like, hey, this is the one to mess with.
Exactly.
And like I feel like the way he whistles and like close and far, that's like bait.
Exactly, it's like bait, and I don't know about you, which obviously it seems to be the case for both of us, but like you said, man, since I've been covering and researching, this has been the most like paranoia-inducing story that I've had.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm sure for a lot of you listeners, like I know a lot of you guys really like the shadow people. You guys said it really scares you. Like you have no idea how much we've like. I'm pretty sure we both experienced a lot of paranoia just because of this subject alone. So I'm curious to see what you guys think about it in the comment section. This was definitely been one of the more interesting ones. I think it was really simple. But the stories that came along with it, and of course the video that we played,
it's enough to freak you out.
That's enough to freak you out, like for days.
Yeah, if you have any stories about this, especially, like I'd be very interested to hear. It's kind of like those things where you kind of think of it as something so normal that you're like, oh, I'm sure it's happened once or twice. Maybe you even forgot about it until hearing this. But if you have any stories, drop them down in the comments because I would love to read about them. Yeah,
if you guys have any sort of experience, not only with something like this, but any other sort of unsettling event, go ahead and let us know in the comment section. You guys have really been a great support over the past few weeks since we started this project, and we just want to say thank you guys for tuning in and listening every week. But I think that's it for this episode. What do you think?
I think that's it.
All right, guys, till next time, thank you for listening to the Midnight Tapes.